Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Beware the Board, a horror podcast where we watch a randomly selected horror movie every single week. I'm Bob.
And I'm Ben.
Hey, Ben.
What's up?
Nothing much.
Yeah, you having a good day so far?
Oh, explode. Please immediately explode. I'm having such an awful, no good, horrible, bad day, and Ben keeps teasing me about it and being like, you can't be upset on the podcast. Shut up!
Why do I sound like Bill Clinton?
Bill Clinton?
Your voice was weird.
There's only one thing about being Bill Clinton that I would have liked.
I
and
did
it's,
not have sexual relations with women.
What a good way to start the podcast.
We can roll it
Good
back
God.
again.
No, we're not rolling it back
We've
again.
had to, guys.
No, we're keeping this in.
All right.
We're keeping this in. What are you drinking, Ben?
You could have also sounded like Hank Hill. It was a little bit in. It was something.
Bill Clinton and Hank Hill are two very different people.
I don't know. It was a weird voice. It definitely was not what I sound like. It was just funnier if I said Bill Clinton. I, too, can also play the saxophone.
Can you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can. I forgot you told me that.
I was in band for like 8 years.
True. No, I was in band for 3. I did band for 3 years and then in choir for 4. We should start a band, man.
No, you've already gotten your "we should do this" out of the way. You did a podcast. You should already be ashamed of yourself.
What do you mean?
You can't do another one.
We can. We can do whatever we want.
We should start a band.
For fun. I was like, we have a shared hobby we could do together that isn't the podcast.
Do you know how much your dog would chimp out if we practiced music in your house?
Oh, she'd get so mad.
Exactly.
She would get so angry. Anyway, you can answer my question.
What was the question?
What are you drinking?
Oh, I'm drinking Cheerwine. It's a cherry flavored soda.
Okay.
For anyone who doesn't know, it's red.
Well, it's like a regional thing, right? It's like only like down here.
I think it's East Coast. I think it's
Is it East Coast?
From like.
I thought it was from one of the Carolinas, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Does it say on the can?
It probably does somewhere.
It says since 1917.
Oh. I just thought I'd bring that up because I thought that was fairly interesting considering that it's something that you can really only get down here. And for people that are not from here, it's kind of cool.
It's under the authority of the Carolina Beverage Corp.
It's definitely one of the Carolinas then. North or south.
It's sodium free.
Really? That's actually kind of interesting for a soda. Sodium free?
Yeah.
Lots of sodas have salt in them.
I like salt.
I do too.
I'm a salty boy.
You are a salty boy. You make me so angry sometimes. Okay. Do you have anything you want to talk about before we get to the podcast part of the podcast?
We look like we finally picked out movies for Scarefest. So
yeah, convention prep movies have been picked.
We're only going to do like 5 or 6 this year.
Compared to what, the 22 or something last year?
So I don't have to die again.
Yeah, no, that was bad.
Because if I do 22 again, I'm going to die. Because classes start tomorrow and I can't do both. Not again.
And also, we might, look, I'm just putting this in the world. We might get the chance to record one of the Unholy Trinity.
The Unholy Trinity?
Yeah, and get that out at some point.
Don't put your eggs all in one basket, Bob.
This is multiple baskets. Those are 2 different baskets, Ben.
You get no baskets.
So I'm going to carry the eggs?
Yeah. Juggle them.
I can't juggle.
Exactly. That's
Fuck.
why you shouldn't be counting your eggs.
You're right. Okay. So in horror news, before we get to, the actual podcast part of the podcast, Longlegs continues its amazing box office run, surpassing $100 million at the worldwide box office and becoming the top grossing rated R movie of 2024 so far. Apparently, it's really good, and we still need to watch it. All I've heard is good things. Like, I've only heard people, being excited about that movie. And I just think it's cool. Mostly because it's an indie film. And it's who made it? Neon is the production company. And they are I think they made that movie for $10 million. And it's surpassed $100 million. So they've more than made their money. And I just think it's cool that a smaller production company is getting a big piece of the pie when it comes to horror releases this year so far.
No, that's definitely cool. That doesn't happen all the time. But it seems like it's become more of a thing recently.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially as the lines between, I think movie theaters and, at-home stuff starts to blur.
Mm-hmm.
Indie stuff has been doing better. I mean, we talk about it a lot on this podcast, but look at Terrifier last year.
Yeah.
How well that did for being an indie production.
Yeah. No, it's just really, really cool. I'm excited. We got to get around to watching it, bro. Like
At
it's
some
one of those-
point.
it's one of the worst and best parts of this podcast is the fact that we watch movies in categories. So if a movie doesn't fit the category, we'll never watch it. But we do. Then we get to watch other cool stuff that like I never thought I'd seen before or would get to watch.
Yeah.
Like Zombie for Sale, as an example. Like, when would we
See.
ever have watched that? Like, because I pitched a category, we got a cool, interesting movie. But unless I pitch a category that specifically Long Legs would fit into, we're never going to watch it for the show until we get around to it. You know what I mean? And that sucks. But also, it makes it interesting for the show.
That's just how the show works, man.
I know,
don't
but
know
it's
what to tell you.
frustrating. It's so frustrating. My point is, Ben, we need to break the convention of the show a little bit more often and just watch new shit because I'm so worried I'm going to see spoilers for Long Legs. Like, I'm so worried about it because of how popular it is. It's one of those things that's, like, killing me. Like, I have to be careful.
Just don't.
I wish. Sometimes Twitter just be feeding me bullshit.
You mean X?
Oh, okay. We're not getting into that.
When it does bad things, it's X.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Next thing. In cool new horror movie news, a new film from director Aaron Bratcher titled Slash Squatch, inspired by horror classics like Tremors and one of my personal favorite movies we've done so far, the 1988 remake of The Blob, is coming out. It's like being produced. They're starting production. The film was being funded via Indiegogo with a goal of $35,000 to make the film. Currently sits at $6,000 with 28 backers as of recording. The film's premise is simple. A weapon-wielding Sasquatch terrorizes a small town. That sounds cool. Check them out on Indiegogo. Try and, support them. It's a smaller production. They already have like 5 minutes up on their website of the movie, so you can watch the first 5 minutes for free just to see what it's about. There's a trailer and stuff. I looked at the poster. It looks really fun and cool. I like that idea. I like the premise.
You like anything involving the Sasquatch.
I'm a Bigfoot enjoyer, yeah, man. It's cool. Bigfoot's one of the cool cryptids.
You might say you're a Bigfoot enthusiast.
That makes it sound weird. Enthusiast implies other things.
A big foot enthusiast.
You know I don't like feet. Feet are gross. They might be the grossest part of the human body. Gross. Anyway, sounds cool. I'm excited about it. I think it'll be at least interesting because, like, there are plenty of movies about cryptids, and normally it's just like, oh, monster. And that's interesting, but a Bigfoot with a weapon? Kind of cool. I don't know. I thought that one sounded fun. Thought I'd mention it.
Yeah, and since you mentioned it, I don't know if you know this.
What?
But I'm a fan of Tremors.
I know you're a fan of Tremors, and we need to watch that at some point, too.
It's right over there.
Oh, yeah, I forgot you got it.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Now we definitely got to watch it.
You guys couldn't see. I was pointing at my TV stand. We have all the movies we've seen.
Yeah.
And also my personal movies on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's all my news for this week. So, what are we doing this week, Ben? You know what I'm doing? Have you thought about it? You have a guess of what I'm picking?
You told me kaiju last week.
I know what I told you. That never matters. I'm a liar.
You should probably do kaiju.
What do you mean I should probably?
Well, we got 2 of them left. I think it would be fun.
And that leaves us with one in every category still, which is a good way to end the season. A good
We'll get a nice splatter.
perusing, the categories. So I think you're right. I will choose kaiju.
The real question is, which one did you want? Because I'm pretty sure you have a good idea of what could be left in the kaiju for one spot.
Yeah, one of them is Godzilla. It has to be. Like the OG Godzilla film. Because if it's not, you're a fucking maniac for picking that category and then not putting it in there. But I hope I don't get Godzilla because I want to end the season on that. Because that feels like it's probably going to be the best one, right? I mean, not that I think anything could really top Gamera the Giant Monster, because that movie was fucking awesome.
A lot of movies could top Gamera the Giant Monster.
Do they have a fire-breathing turtle that spins through space?
Not turtle, but most of that other stuff, yes.
Anyway, what do I have left for kaiju films, Ben?
1 and 3, it looks like.
I mean, so I'm trying to get into your brain here to meta and try and figure out where Godzilla could be located. And of course, in my opinion, you do these ordered 1, 2, 3, and Godzilla is probably the first thing you thought of when you pitched kaiju movies.
But Bob, I don't know how to say this, but the inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.
Even to you. So I'm going to pick 3 and hope that it's not Godzilla. But if it is, that's okay. It's probably going to be fun and exciting, and I'm okay with it. But I don't want to do that one yet.
You sure?
You stupid bitch. Are you sure? Yes!
Are you?
Yes! Fuck. Yes. What are we watching, Ben?
Today, for spot number 3, we are going to be watching The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms.
The Beast from Ocean movie. No. I don't even care that it's a kaiju movie. The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms.
Yeah,
Or aren't you 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which is a good book.
it is.
Yeah. All right. Hit me.
Description. Oh, first of all, it's from 1953.
Hell yeah, dude.
But description. The forefather of the King of Monsters.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Came out in 1953. It's an hour and 20 minutes long.
All right.
It's got an approved rating.
Oh, I love
Your
when
favorite.
that happens.
Review scores. IMDb gave it a 6.6 out of 10.
That's pretty good.
Tomato meter score of 91%.
Oh, fuck yeah, dude.
And an audience score of 68%.
That tomato meter score is high as fuck. And that bodes well.
It does. For awards, it has 0 wins and 2 nominations. Notable actors are Paul Christian as Professor Tom Nesbitt. He played Hassan in Baghdad. Paula Raymond as Lee Hunter. They were Kara Wilson in Hand of Death. Cecil Calloway as Dr. Thurgood Elson. He was Monsieur Ryan in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Kenneth Tobey as Colonel Jack Evans. He was Captain Patrick Hedry in The Thing from Another World.
Oh, that's... damn it. We have to watch that now.
Good movie. I like it. I own it. Donald Woods as Captain Phil Jackson. He was Perry Mason in The Case of the Stuttering Bishop. Ross Elliott as George Ritchie. He was Joe Birch in Tarantula.
Oh, we haven't seen that yet either.
The big spider movie, you
yeah.
know. Steve Brody as Sergeant Loomis. He was Fisher in Out of the Past. Jack Pennick as Jacob Bowman. He was Doc, and They Were Expendable. Michael Fox as ER Doctor. He was Helga's father in Young Frankenstein.
Oh, God, quit naming movies we haven't seen.
Lee Van Cleef as Corporal Stone. He was Hawk in Escape from New York. Frank Ferguson as Dr. Morden. He was Mr. McDougal in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Another movie. Look, Ben, just putting this out there. We should cover the Frankenstein movies as our first series that we finish all of.
I thought we were going to random it.
Oh, we are going to random it. But that's a good one, though, because I want to watch all those. I'm excited about those.
Or
What?
The Mummy.
Shut up.
The Mummy's Hand. The Mummy's Tomb.
The Curse of the Mummy's Tomb.
The Curse of the Mummy.
Yeah. Oh,
Scorpion King.
stop. See, I knew you were going to go there. Fucking Scorpion King head ass.
King Donovan as Dr. Ingersoll. He was Jack Bellis. I think it's Belichick. An Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Oh, another movie we need to watch.
The original one, not the remake. Director's Eugene Laurie. He also directed a little film we've talked about on this podcast, Gorgo.
When was the last time we talked about Gorgo? Was that like 2 weeks ago or something?
No, it was much longer.
Was it
than
much
that.
longer ago? I remember
They got
pretty
added
recent.
to Shudder, and I was like,
Gorgo.
Gorgo.
Yeah.
Looks
That's
like
funny.
Godzilla, but he's got ears. Writers Lou Morheim. He also wrote Larceny, and Fred Freiberger. He worked on Korg, 7000 BC. He did 16 episodes in 1974. Budget's estimated at $210,000.
God, that's so cheap.
For 1953.
For 1953, that's a lot of money, but by modern standards, that's not a lot of money. But I don't know how inflation, affects that. I don't know how much more that would be.
I mean, that was a pretty big deal, Bob. What else was going on in the 1940s?
Oh, yeah. Huh. That is a lot of money in 1940. Yeah, okay.
No, I'm just joking. This is 1953, so we're good.
I thought...
It's
Jesus
post-war.
Christ.
We were good post-war. Box office estimated at $2 million, it looks like, for North America.
Damn.
And then it was hard to confirm, but it does look like it might have been $5 million worldwide.
That's a lot,
But,
a lot.
a good amount of money. Country of origin, United States.
This is something... I was curious because you were naming a bunch of English people. I thought most of the movies in this category were going to be from Japan.
Well,
This one's not.
now we're 50-50.
Yeah.
Also known as Monster from Beneath the Sea.
Oh.
That was the working title.
Okay.
From the U.S., obviously. There's 2 taglines, and I got them both.
Okay.
The first one is, they couldn't believe their eyes. They couldn't escape the terror. And neither will you.
I don't hate it.
So that's the first one. The second one is the sea's master beast of the ages raging up from the bottom of time.
That goes so hard.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That sounds like something from like a fucking epic fantasy novel.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I'm glad you said that because it is from something.
Oh,
This might be an adaptation of sorts.
oh, of what?
So the screenplay for this movie is loosely based on a Ray Bradbury story, specifically his 1951 short story, The Foghorn.
Oh, that's cool.
And there's a very specific scene in this movie that is a reference to that. So we will get to see that. That's also where the title of this movie comes from. The original title of that short story was The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms when it was published in the Saturday Evening Post.
That's sweet. Ray Bradbury wrote what, Fahrenheit 451? Same guy? Am I lying?
I believe so, yeah.
Pretty sure it's the same author. Also a very good book, which I have not read since I was in high school, but I do remember really liking that book.
Bob's like, I had to read it for high school.
Yeah, I did, but I also liked that one of all the ones we read.
I mean, that's fair. In either case, the whole story behind the production here with this adaptation is that when Bradbury's story first came out, a film with a similar plot was in production, like it was being produced under the working title Monster from Beneath the Sea. However, the producers, when seeing Bradbury's work and its popularity, wanted to capitalize on that. So they bought his short story rights, and then they retitled the film.
Okay. So it's really loosely based on it. They just wanted to use the name.
Yeah, besides from one very specific scene, and we can talk about that after the movie.
Okay.
It's fairly loosely based because, again, it's a very short story, not, a novella or anything like that. With that being said, the design for the film's monster was eventually based on illustrations of the monster featured in the Saturday Evening Post.
Oh, sweet.
So while the story might not be based on anything,
The monster itself is.
kinda.
That's pretty rad.
Not on his writing, but
Sure.
you know how it is. Anyways, to get into some actual cool facts here, outside of Ray Bradbury, you might find that cool, you might not. But there's special effects in this film.
Yeah.
But it's 1953. We don't have CGI yet. So how are we going to do our monsters?
That's extremely interesting considering this is an ocean movie, assumedly.
Well, apparently the special effects for this film are done by the father of Dynamation himself, Ray Harryhausen. Do you recognize that name?
Vaguely.
He's a very, 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 very famous stop-motion animator.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah.
Now, I'm sure you don't know the term Dynamation, right?
No.
So, Dynamation is a term Harryhausen coined himself, but it's a technique based on model animation techniques, which were pioneered by Harryhausen's mentor, Willis O'Brien. And Dynamation makes it appear as if live-action actors are interacting with stop-motion elements.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So it's pretty cool. Now, you might be wondering why I chose an American film for the kaiju category.
I am extremely interested.
And do you remember what I said my criteria were for choosing kaiju films this season?
Oh, God, no. It's been, what, fucking 6 weeks since you told me that, probably?
Or last week.
Did you tell me last week?
I might have, because we
I don't
covered
remember.
kaiju for the first time. But the whole deal with my selection choices is I wanted to get stuff that were either, super iconic,
Sure.
but more importantly, the foundation for kaiju films. Kind of old ones that would go on to inspire other things. And I thought this was a really good example of that because this film is one of the earliest atomic monster films.
Oh, okay.
And very specifically, this film would go on to inspire a plethora of similar films, including Godzilla. I don't know if you remember my description.
No, that's why.
Forefather of the King of Monsters.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
There is stuff in this film, and if we ever watch Godzilla on the podcast, you'll be like, wow.
I think we're going to watch Godzilla on the podcast.
I've seen this before.
Okay.
In this other movie. Heck, we'll watch this movie, and you're going to remember Gamera the Giant Monster, and you're going to be like, wow, I saw that.
Already.
So that is why it's chosen. And, just to add on to, the whole layers of stuff being based on this film, at one point, there was apparently plans to have the beast snort flames.
Jesus Christ.
But this idea was dropped before production began due to budget restrictions. The concept, however, was used for the film's poster, which went on to inspire supposedly the nuclear flame breath from Godzilla.
Of Godzilla. And also Gamera.
And Gamera, which is based on Godzilla. So yeah, this film is interesting because it's the basis for a lot of kaiju films.
I think the most interesting part is that it's an American movie.
Yep.
And that it inspired a lot of Japanese stuff that I think inherently is Japanese.
Oh yeah, Godzilla is super Japanese.
Godzilla is super duper Japanese, which is cool. And I'm excited to watch it at some point. But I think it's fairly interesting that there's like a jumping off point of like an American movie inspired an entire Japanese like subgenre.
A book that inspired a movie that inspired a movie that inspired a subgenre.
Which is pretty fucking rad.
Yeah.
Okay. That it?
Should be.
All right. Well, I guess we'll see you guys after the movie. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We just finished watching The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms.
I'm glad you got it.
I had to think about it really
I
hard.
thought you were going to lose it.
I also thought I was going to lose it. I really had to, like, really drill that into my noggin so I didn't fuck up this little intro thing.
So, you like it?
Yeah, it was cool. I liked it, yeah. It was very different than I expected.
No, it definitely feels like a 50s sci-fi movie.
Rather than a kaiju movie.
Mm-hmm.
But that was cool.
But I'm just going to put this out here. You could see some stuff that was in Gamera, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a lot of it. It
So,
was a lot of the same stuff.
I mean, it's definitely a backbone there. Like, you can see where the inspiration comes from.
But I will say it's not super close that it removed any sort of enjoyment from this movie or from Gamera.
No, it's very different than a kaiju movie in a lot of ways. It's just there's a lot of similar plot points and illusions that make this film feel like it's a prototype. So I do think it's cool.
It's definitely cool.
But I'm glad you liked it. As always, we recommend you go check it out before you get any spoilers. If you want to go watch it, I think you can rent it and stuff on Amazon and whatever. I definitely think it's worth a watch. I'll put this out here, though. It's stop motion effects, and it's an old film. So if you're not into that, you're probably not going to like it. It's also in black and white, but I thought it looked really good. With that being said, we're going to do a brief description, and then we'll get into spoilers. The setup for this is near identical to the setup of Gamera.
Well, this time it was intentional. Last time it was an accident.
Essentially, they drop some nukes down at the North Pole.
Yeah.
And it blows up some ice sheets, and it frees a prehistoric lizard. I believe it's a rotosaur.
Yeah.
Rhedosaur?
It's RHED.
Rhedosaur. Yeah,
it's a Rhedosaurus or whatever.
Rhedosaurus. And so, interestingly enough, half the movie is this one guy who saw it trying to prove that it's real.
Which is very interesting.
And then the back half is, monster rampage. Again, very classic sci-fi. If you like that, if that sounds good, I'd recommend you check it out. I thought it was really cool, especially if you're a kaiju fan, because you're going to be like, oh, this is familiar. With that being said, we're going to get into talking about it. So, spoilers ahead. Right off the bat, anything you want to talk about specifically?
Well, I mean, I think you just really mentioned it, but I thought that the coolest part about this movie and what made it so interesting in compared to something like Gamera was that there really wasn't a ton of monster in this movie. I mean, the back half, of course, is Monster Rampage, and you get a lot more of it. But I would say the first hour is almost no monster. But it's really cool because it's a lot of investigative, like, scientific research stuff to try and, A, prove that the monster is real, B, figure out what kind of, like, dinosaur it is or where it could be heading or what it's doing. And I think that's fairly interesting and cool.
Yeah, I think logistically, we only see the monster in the opening, so maybe the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we don't see it again, except for a couple brief sequences where we get to see it, like, destroy something really quick, until the last 30 minutes of the movie. So we get about 40 minutes of just character work. And not to shit on Gamera the Giant Monster, but unlike Gamera, the human characters are actually fun to watch.
And they're actually interesting.
And we talked about that on that episode, and I'll bring it up here again. can you see what I'm talking about when I say kaiju films tend to have like human characters doing human stuff?
Yeah.
Because you really do have to carry over your giant monster film with other stuff. And I think this film does a really good job of it during these sequences. Essentially, for those 40 minutes we don't have the monster, it really becomes a minor romance thing. Our main character, Professor Nesbit,
Yeah, you
is a
got it.
professor, and his love interest, research assistant lady.
You don't even know her name, bro?
I don't know her name. Are you shocked?
No, I'm not shocked, but I mean, I'm a little upset because you got the first guy's name. Her name's Lee.
His name's Nesbit.
And?
It's funny.
Okay, maybe a little bit.
Okay, and Lee
Yeah.
and Lee have this little romance thing going. It's not very... It's obvious.
Sure.
They have raging sexual tension, but it's not like a blatant romance film.
It's not the forefront of the whole situation, but it is nice, like, character background stuff.
But it essentially is this film about Nesbit, and then eventually joined by Lee, just trying to prove he's not crazy.
And that's cool.
And yeah, it's a bit of good fun, I think. But yeah, I was shocked by how much I liked that. I hadn't seen this film yet.
Mm-hmm.
I planned on watching it a while ago, but I was like, I'll do kaiju and we'll throw it on the board.
You know what it reminds me of, and it just hit me? Invisible Man. It gives off those sort of, like, interesting, like, sci-fi vibes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's kind of that classic thing of they're from a very similar time period.
Yeah.
And they're coming from a similar culture. This is a Warner Bros. Film.
Mm-hmm.
So that one's Universal. Kind of related studios.
Sort of.
Somewhat. They're both American.
Yeah.
See, obvious. But no, I thought those 40 minutes were surprisingly interesting for not being a monster movie. They do some good stuff where we get the background of the creature, like, okay, how was it frozen in the ice? What is it?
Where did it live before it was frozen? Like, where should it be?
And that's all great. I will say it does feel a bit overly long, I think, once you get to the end of it.
Yeah.
I there was no point where I was like, okay, I'm bored.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's a giant monster movie, and I want to see my giant monster, especially since it looks amazing.
It looks sweet.
And, getting 50 minutes before you get any of the rampage is a little frustrating, I will say. Assumedly, that was done for budgetary reasons.
Oh, yeah. From what I can tell, that monster probably was so expensive to, like, maintain and make it do cool stuff.
Yeah, because, look, you might not like stop motion. Audience members, not Bob. Bob likes it, assumedly. I hope so.
Yeah.
You might not like it, but you have to appreciate how much work that goes into it.
Mm-hmm.
And taking, all that work and then adding on top of that, inserting that stop motion over top of live action stuff. It's not only hard, but it would have taken so long, and you have to pay someone for that. And I think that was probably the main limiting factor behind not having the monster on screen all the time. But I just want to say right now, I thought all of it looked really, really good.
It's super sweet.
They do their best to have the monster acting on mini sets, but especially during the end parts of the film where their monster is rampaging, there's a lot of stuff where it's just like people running in front of the monster.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one great effect where they pick up a person.
The monster eats somebody, like whole ass swallows a man, and you see the whole thing, and it looks awesome.
And I was just, shocked by how well they did that, because this would have been fairly early on for that technique.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought that was really good.
No, I think the big benefit this movie has to something like Gamera, where you see the monster all the time, and it's constantly breaking shit, is it makes the moments where the monster does something really cool super impactful, because you only get a little bit of it.
Yeah, you don't get bored of the monster.
No, you don't at all.
It's all spectacle, and it's all great. And I do think that is the fortunate or unfortunate benefit, depending on how you look at it, of having that lower budget and having to, like, decide where you want your monster stuff. If we want to talk about it for a second, I thought the stop motion looked great.
It looks really good.
The creature is surprisingly detailed, and I really liked its design. It kind of reminds me of... Have you ever seen really, really old, like, Iguanodon reconstructions?
Mm-mm.
Let me see if I can pull one up for you. Here it is.
Oh, okay.
So, paleontology has not always been great. And one of the fun parts of this film is you do get to see the old-fashioned paleontology stuff that was super inaccurate.
Yeah.
I forget who the artist is, but they have some of the really, really old famous drawings that they used back in the 50s that are, again, super inaccurate. You have your brontosauruses being like aquatic animals or semi-aquatic animals. Your T-Rex acting like a kangaroo. But that makes cool monsters.
Oh,
because
yeah,
they're
for sure.
different than what you expect. And the design of, again, I think it's the Rhedosaurus, looks like the old Iguanodon constructions. I showed you a picture. What do you think?
Yeah,
Kinda?
it looks. Yeah, that one. The only thing is the iguanodon's more chunky, but this is more lithe and like serpent-like.
Yeah, it's essentially a four-legged creature with kind of a T-Rex head and then just a really, really long tail. It kind of looks like a more classic, I'm doing this in quotations, dinosaur version of a real-life aquatic iguana. I thought it was really cool.
No, it's sweet.
You can definitely see how if you stood this thing on two legs, though,
It would be Godzilla.
It would be Godzilla.
Yeah.
Which it does do at one point, and it is kind of like, oh.
Well, there it is.
If Godzilla could move more because it was a claymation thing and not a guy in a rubber suit, this is what it would be. But I thought it was really cool. You know, outside of the design stuff, the way it moves is interesting. It feels alive. We get to see it swim at one point.
The swimming is so cool.
It's semi-aquatic, and it does move like an aquatic iguana. It, like, moves its tail and
I'm
everything.
just impressed with how much it moves, like its individual parts. Like it's because sometimes in claymation you can kind of get away with like only showing the top of it and like only moving that stuff around to do like scary stuff with its head. But in this, like, it moves its arms and its tail and like it does a lot of really fluid motions that makes it come alive in really cool ways.
Yeah, and this is where I'm going to put this out here. That's just solely because the effects for this film were done by Harryhausen, and he is essentially one of the best stop-motion animators of all time. Do you know anything by him?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so this is kind of cool because it'll be our first film with him.
Okay.
We'll probably cover some other stuff by him eventually. I can list some stuff. We can go over them really quick. Might as well. He did The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. If you've ever heard of that one.
I have.
Very famous one for dinosaur lovers. Valley of Gwangi.
Oh, I've heard of that too.
It's like a Western kind of thing, but with a T-Rex. Did all the Sinbad films. He did this one, 1,000,000 Years BC, which is
the American version of
the British one, yeah.
Yeah.
He does stop motion for that. Also looks really great. Just does a lot of stuff. I think he did what's his really famous one? I don't know. He does a lot of stop motion. It's great stuff.
No, it's really impressive.
And so I'm glad we got to see it for this. He does Clash of the Titans. That's the really famous one.
I don't know that one. I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is.
Do you know the claymation skeletons? No?
No. Whoa, those look sick as fuck.
They're really famous. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go look them up. But yeah, I thought it was just a really good example of classic stop motion. Sad we don't get to see stuff like that anymore.
No, not really. A lot of it is sort of, I guess I get why CGI and stuff has taken over all this because
it's so much
people
easier.
don't like it and it's a lot cheaper and easier. But I'm just such a fan of how hard this is to do and how impressive it can be.
Yeah. I think one of the most impressive shots in the film, from a technical perspective, is at one point they have the Rhedosaurus destroying a amusement park.
Oh, it's so good.
Assumingly, it's Coney Island, right?
Yeah, assumedly. I don't know.
But it is destroying a roller coaster that then gets set on fire. And I don't know if you could tell, but they had to layer so many shots on top of each other.
Oh, yeah, to make it work.
Within the scenes, they had, obviously they were doing the stop motion creature, and they would have it destroy the set that was the roller coaster. I think at times they had in the background some real stuff from Coney Island, but then in the foreground they would have stuff on fire as a separate sequence. And then later in the sequence, when they pulled the monster out of the roller coaster section, they then lit the roller coaster on fire and then played that footage over or behind the stop motion.
And then animated that over top of it.
Yeah. Just wild stuff like that.
No, it's super, super dope. The cool part about this movie for me is the effects of the monster and watching it rampage and stuff. Like, that really makes it. And like we said earlier, you don't get as much of that as you do in something like Gamera. But what's super, super cool is,
No, this had a much higher budget than Gamera.
and because it had a much higher budget, you get to see the monster do way cooler stuff. Like, yeah, Gamera was cool and I had a good time, but like, this movie is set in New York, and so it's a much bigger, like, denser city, and so you watch the monster just crash through whole buildings and like crash onto cars and stuff, and it's just really, really impressive and really, really cool.
Yeah, I definitely think it's worth a watch if you're a fan of like practical effects, particularly stop motion, because I think it is a really good example of that. Since you just mentioned it, yeah, this is set in New York, and I think the coolest thing about that, and it's my favorite thing about especially old films, is whenever they're set in a famous location, you get to look back at that location in a time period where none of us were alive.
Well,
Me or Bob, and I
I was about
assume
to say.
none of the people listening to this.
maybe.
But maybe. But it's still super cool to see because
It's dope.
it's 1950s New York. It's so different
Mm-hmm.
than what New York is like now, let alone even 20, 40 years ago. And I think that was really cool. Same thing with all the costuming and everything like that. The policemen are wearing bizarre uniforms.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
a trench coat, kind of tweed jacket
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Sort of, yeah.
They have batons.
Some of them have batons, and they have to go fight a dinosaur.
I feel sorry for them.
Pretty funny.
Just lots of cool old stuff like that.
Yeah.
The military comes in at one point,
I was about to talk about that.
which is really good, and Bob
really
gave
love
me a lesson on old grenade launchers,
Yeah.
which were just guns with a grenade on top.
Yeah, because why would you give a guy a grenade launcher when you can make a special grenade that launches off of a rifle?
with a bullet.
With a bullet? Yeah, it's awesome.
And yeah, I just think all that stuff is really cool to see because you can't capture that same authenticity even when you have a modern film set in the past.
No, because you lose... There's, like, certain stuff that just gets lost over time that you'll never be able to capture. And with this film, because it came out when it did, you get all of the real elements of it that you... Stuff gets lost over time, and with this, you didn't lose that because it's from the period.
Yeah, and I thought that was really cool.
It's super dope, and I think that comes especially into play when you look at, like... You mentioned it earlier, but, like, some of the scientific stuff that we learn and, like, talk about and experience through paleontology. Because, yeah, a lot of that nowadays is inaccurate.
All the science in this movie is complete nonsense.
But it's awesome.
It is, because it's, you listen to it and it's like, oh, this is what they actually thought was somewhat feasible.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put it out here and say this is what they thought was real. No, but they thought some of the stuff they say is feasible enough to be believable, like you want in any good sci-fi stuff. But I think it's really interesting because I've, read other stories from this time period. I've read The Lost World, which is the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle one, which has dinosaurs in it. And I've read Frozen Hell and Who Goes There, which, Thing from Another World. And they all draw on similar stuff. Lost World has dinosaurs, so I got to see a very similar portrayal of paleontology and what they thought dinosaurs was. Who Goes There deals with things frozen in ice coming back to life, which they kind of touch on here. And it was just really cool seeing a lot of the scientific jargon kind of be repeated. Because I was like, oh, this is all nonsense, but you all had the same nonsense coming from the same consciousness.
Yeah. And it also comes through in the fact that we get to see a lot of scientific technology that is not used nowadays because we've advanced past that. Like, at one point, they used a diving bell.
There's a whole diving bell sequence.
And it's super dope.
And the thing that makes it really dope is not just the diving bell, which is legitimately, like, fairly cool. It's the fact that they have a whole underwater sequence. So they build an underwater set, and they have the Reddisaurs swim through it.
It's dope.
And those are very impressive, because assumedly they had an armature holding it up.
Yeah.
But they expertly blocked it with a rock or something, and then they would just have it swim freeform through the open air, because there was no water there. I thought all that looks super cool.
No, it's really fucking rad.
Which I think is kind of our underlying statement with this movie. It's like, I don't know how good it was, but it was super cool.
That is kind of the thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a cool film, but it wasn't amazing.
Yeah. Like,
there's good characterization that holds you through those first 50 minutes, but I'm not in love with any of these characters. No, they're all okay. The romance subplot is kind of there, but it's not
fleshed out enough.
Not fleshed out enough. They kind of just have romantic tension the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Some characters die, but it's not really sad.
No.
That kind of sucks, but it's all passable. And the fact
Mhm.
that there's really cool effects, I think, really does carry it through. Especially because all that stuff is just interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
They do add some legitimately interesting ideas to the film. I think one of the really fun ones is the reason the monster ends up in New York, which is because it's following, assumedly it's old breeding pathways.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it knows that all its people met up right off the coast of New York, so that's where it's going. And that's how they find it, as they follow the path of destruction. But one of the really cool, minor things on the human side, which is not necessarily something you think about when you're thinking about kaiju films, is that it spreads an infection.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the more unique parts of this movie.
It's definitely interesting. And it's a layer that it doesn't need, but is nice.
What exists for why doesn't the military just destroy this creature?
Yeah, why don't they just nuke it again?
Well, it's not even that. It's like, we know it can be killed with, guns.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't they? It's because every time we kill it, everyone gets sick.
Because the blood is what spreads the infection.
Yeah. I thought that was really cool. It feels analogous to, some fallout that's associated with a lot of radioactive kaiju.
Mm-hmm. It's cool.
But yeah, definitely a very interesting addition to justify how the military reacts and the lengths they have to go to. And that is something you do get to see in later films. I've heard, I haven't seen Gorgo yet. I just think it's a very funny name. I've seen clips from it. And part of the reason I put off watching it is I've heard it's just very similar to this movie.
Oh, okay.
Very, very similar to this movie. And I think that's a good point to make, that the more kaiju film we're going to watch, the more kaiju film are going to be, similar to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to see a lot of kaiju films that are oh, it's 20,000 Fathoms, because this one would go on to inspire Godzilla.
I mean, this is the first one, right?
And then Godzilla wouldn't inspire everything else. I think the most obvious sequence from that is, there's a sequence from Ray Bradbury's story that is kind of the only sequence that gets adapted super faithfully into this film. And it's where the Rhedosaurus destroys a lighthouse.
It's super cool.
But we've totally seen that before.
Oh yeah, it was in Gamera.
Yeah.
It's the
and
same
I'm sure we'll
setup.
never see that again.
No,
ever.
Because what? I mean, look, you have a giant sea monster. What's the closest thing and biggest thing to the sea that a giant sea monster could destroy? A lighthouse. And it's cool. I think it looks good in this movie too. I really like it.
But it'll be cool going forward to see more of that framework stuff get repeated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. We've not really touched on it. I mean, we have a little bit, but I actually really like the response of the military in this movie and how much of it we actually get to see, because it feels fairly realistic. Because basically, when the Rhedosaurus shows up in New York, they basically evacuate and start setting up barricades and stuff and trying to contain the monster. And I think that's actually super dope and really cool.
I also love how, because this is set before smartphones, everyone runs away and acts sensible.
Yeah.
Unlike in a modern movie, looking at you, Cloverfield, where people just keep recording the monster.
Oh, really?
Well, Cloverfield's a found footage film.
I didn't know that.
Oh, it is.
Cool.
So a good example of people filming a monster as it marches towards them.
Nice. But I really like the way that the military responds and the fact that they are very sensible and do a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely tell this is a post-war movie.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
It feels like 1953. It feels like America just came off their kicking the world's ass kind of hype, because there is very clearly this sentiment of, yeah, we could kill this monster right away.
Yeah, if we wanted to, we could just blow it away.
We just need to find it and do it safely. Which, again, is why I think that whole side plot of the disease is there.
Yeah.
On that point, though, I don't actually know if there's too much more to talk about.
No, because it's fairly simple.
Yeah, I mean, the character stuff is essentially padding, because it's 40 minutes of a back and forth of a guy going, I saw a monster, believe me, and everyone else going, no.
Yeah.
And then everything else is just shots of monster destroying stuff. It's fairly simple, like I think most decent kaiju films are at their heart. And that does mean there isn't much here to discuss. And, I don't want to give everything away, even though we've given out a good bit.
I was about to say, I don't think we're missing anything.
I just don't want to, talk it to death, because I do think it is worth a watch if you haven't seen it.
For sure.
So I guess on that point, you just want to do ratings and everything?
Sure thing.
Okay. Recommendations first, though.
Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in the kaiju genre, I think this is fairly cool. It's an American movie, which I think is interesting, considering, at least stereotypically in my mind, kaiju movies are Japanese.
Yeah, I think this is a really cool film to watch if you haven't seen it, but are a huge fan of kaiju movies, especially Showa era stuff.
If you're a fan of practical effects and stop motion claymation, so cool, super duper impressive, super cool stuff with the Rhedosaurus. I think it looks really, really nice, and I think a lot of the things that you see it do, while you can tell how they did it, are very impressive because you have to think about the fact that they had to do this all practically and they could not rely on CGI, so they had to do some really interesting and impressive stuff to make it work. I mean, if you're a fan of 1950s sci-fi, this gives off hardcore 1950s sci-fi film vibes with all of the investigation stuff, all of the learning about dinosaur stuff, all of the interesting, like, nuclear stuff that you learn about. I think it's pretty freaking cool. I think those are my recommendations, though.
All right. A lot of the same stuff here. If you want to see a nice, like, classic sci-fi monster film, I think this one's really great. In many ways, it reminds me of other things from the time period dealing with giant animals or bugs or whatever caused by nuclear radiation. It's got the very similar premise and execution. So if you like those, this is probably going to be right up your alley. If you're a fan of, like, old kaiju films and maybe, like, kaiju history and seeing, like, how things developed, I think this is a good film to watch if you haven't seen it already, because you can definitely see where it gave some inspiration to other big names in the genre. But the big one, if you like anyone in this film, particularly Harryhausen.
Yeah.
He's great. Monster looks amazing. If you haven't seen it, check it out. That is all. Give it a rating.
We mentioned this earlier. I think the movie, while as impressive as the monster and the practical effects are, overall comes out okay. Like, I had a good time, and I was fairly impressed by a lot of the cool stuff that happened. But it's very generic if you're a fan of the kaiju genre. Like, it's very simple. Nuke goes off, sets free monster, monster rampages. Military deals with monster. That's the entire film. That's all of the plot points. But the monster is super impressive. The monster they do some cool sciencey sci-fi stuff that I think is fairly cool. And the characterization and human elements don't suck like they did in Gamera. So I think overall, it's better than a 3. And I think because it inspires a lot of other kaiju things, it deserves more than a 3 because this was the first movie to do it. And so if you're watching this for the first time, coming in with that perspective, it's probably a lot more impressive than I'm giving it credit for. So I think I want to give it 3.5. I think that's fair.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, objectively, plot-wise, I don't think it was anything special. I'm not sure if that's more so because it's so early in a genre that I'm familiar with, or if it's because there's not anything special about it. Like, it feels super familiar. I think the only thing plot-wise that I'd like more of is more characterization. As always, if we're going to have that for 40 minutes, I'd appreciate it to be more fleshed out and more developed. Although, I don't necessarily expect that from a cheesy sci-fi movie from the 50s, so I don't know how much I can complain about that. For me, I think, at the end of the day, it's a well-executed atomic monster film. It's got a cool investigation plot. It's got the obligatory monster destroy stuff sequences. It even has it kill some people, which is really cool because those people are live action in the monsters claymation. But again, the big thing for me is just how cool the effects are. I think they're great. They're made by a really cool dude. And since that's like a thing I'm really into, I think I'm going to give it a 4.
Fair.
Just for mostly that alone.
I almost gave it a 4.
Like, I think it definitely deserves a 3, and I think it's slightly better than a 3. I think whether you're going to give it anything from a 3 to a 4 is depending on how much you can appreciate some of the more classic techniques and stuff in the film.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if you're not a fan of, like, stop motion,
you're probably not going to have a good time.
Practical effects, it's going to be passable.
Or at least you're going to think it's boring, for real.
Yeah. But if you really like those, I think it's pretty good. Not amazing, not a 5, but I think a 4 is pretty solid.
Yeah.
And that being said, I guess we're going to go to the outtakes now.
Yeah.
See what we have.
I think it's a lot of me just going like, God damn, that's so cool.
It was cool.
It was cool. So we'll see you guys in a minute. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the outtake section for this episode of Beware the Board. I hope you're enjoying our review of The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms so far. I really like this movie. I think it's super duper impressive technically. But without further ado, let's get into the outtakes. This first clip is me making a bold prediction about whether this old man will survive the journey.
And so there's lots of stories of some of the early diving bell guys
Mm-hmm.
where the reports are really cool, but it's also like, okay, how much of this was them and how much was them being a little bit loopy and not being able to see? The Venusaur and I are old friends. Nothing bad will ever happen.
Yeah, no way this old bastard survives this right. Like, he's definitely just gonna fucking die down there. Look at him.
Probably gonna be cool though.
It will be cool, but he'll die horribly.
Nah, rapid decompression. It's always fun.
This next clip is our reaction to one of the coolest scenes in the film in finding out whether or not I was right.
If I was that other dude, I'd be like, pull us up.
Look
Pull
at
us
it,
up.
it's coming right at them, bro. That looks so cool. No way.
The most astonishing thing is it's coming right for
towards
us.
and it's eating our fucking... That's incredible. No, that was sweet.
Now, the best version of this is if it's ripped in half and not just like missing.
No, the best part is if it's in its mouth, they pull up like a fishing line and it's attached. Oh no, he's dead. I told you he'd fucking die.
We knew it. He was old. He is literally the equivalent of the character who says, I'm retiring soon.
True. This next clip is our reaction to the monster starting its rampage through New York City.
You know what the funniest part about watching this old movie is?
What?
How sensible the people are at seeing a giant monster.
Yeah, no,
Everyone runs away.
Mm-hmm.
If this was said in the modern day, all these people would just have their phones out and stare there.
Yep. Look at this guy with this cop thinks he's got it. He's got a gun. It's over for this thing.
Bang! Bang!
Oh, all he did was piss it off.
It's an interesting police uniform.
Yeah. Oh, he's dead. He's been... Holy shit!
That looks really good.
That looks really good. He's just gonna eat him. Oh my god, that was horrific. This movie is approved? I just watched a man get eaten by a giant dinosaur.
Yeah, this is for kids of all ages.
This last clip is us realizing what an awful time the monster in this film is probably having. God, imagine being stuck in ice for 10 billion years only to get fucking shot and then lit on fire in an amusement park. What a series of unfortunate circumstances.
The funny part is it woke up and it was like, I'm going to go find my friends.
They're all fucking dead. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the outtakes. Do we have any announcements, Ben?
Not really. We'll do some extra content at some point, guys. Not sure when.
Yeah, turns out Ben's a liar.
I'm not a liar.
Yes, you are.
What
Well, I guess you haven't made a choice yet.
What did I lie about?
Nothing yet.
What are you specifically referring to right now?
Nothing yet.
What Bob is trying to refer to is at the beginning of the episode, he said, maybe we'll record the next film and our unholy trinity. And what was my response to that? I said,
remember.
don't put your eggs in one basket. I said, I'm not sure about that.
And now he's definitely really not sure.
I'm still not sure about it. We also will probably do convention prep stuff before October. I mentioned that at the beginning.
Yeah, we have the movies picked.
We have the movies picked. It only looks like it's going to be 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
We might even cut down that list more, so we don't have to do more, because doing an episode takes us like 4 hours. And doing multiple in a day it's a long
tough.
day. With that being said, usual stick. Check us out wherever you get your podcast: Spotify, Apple Podcast, other places that are podcast specific. If you're doing that, though, please give us a quick recommendation or rating. That really helps us out getting seen by more people on those platforms. Apparently, that's how they do logistical stuff there. However, if you really do want to support us, you can recommend us to a friend, spread us around, maybe like a virulent disease. I'm
Transferred
sure
through dinosaur blood.
we're just as great to listen to as having
Oh, God.
a sickness. Otherwise, check us out on YouTube. We're not the best for audio-only content. is kind of a cool place to support us. We can see all your likes, subscriptions, stuff like that. It is probably the best way for us to gauge how much you guys are liking the show. The RSS feed stuff is very confusing. Same with all the Spotify and Apple Podcast stuff. So it's easier just to look at subscriptions for our YouTube channel. With that being said, YouTube does have a couple cool tools that might make it worth your while. There's a search button, which lets you easily search keywords in all our videos. So if you're looking for a movie we've covered, that's an easy way to check. There's also a bell button, which lets you get notified whenever we post something new, especially if it's out of order.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good way to know. So, eventually when we post the Unholy Trinity or our convention prep, you'll know first if you have that bell button clicked. Otherwise, big thing with YouTube is it's one of the two major places to communicate with us at. You can do that in the comment section of a specific video if there's something you want to talk to us about in that episode. Or you can go over to Twitter at Beware the Board and tell Bob all your stories about sea monsters and how you
oh, no, actually, hold on, don't do that.
Totally saw a monster that killed your friend in an avalanche.
Oh, yeah.
And it was totally a giant lizard living in the Arctic.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Also, I'm terrified of sea monsters, and I don't want to hear any stories about sea monsters, so please don't send me those. I will not read them, and I will be scared. Like Ben said, check us out on Twitter at BewareTheBoard. It's where we post updates about the show, information about the show. Basically, if there's anything you want to know about the show, it goes on our Twitter. On Mondays, I post a spoiler post for that week's worth of episodes, which is a hidden movie cover you can reveal, so you can watch the film before we do. So whatever you listen to the episodes, you don't get any spoilers, and we're being vague about stuff you know what we're talking about. Then on Fridays, or whatever other day an episode goes live, I always post a link to the episode on our Twitter. So if you ever miss an upload or want to know when something went up, there's always a link there. Last thing, we make short-form content for the show at Beware the Board on TikTok and on YouTube Shorts. So if you like short-form content and want to support us, check us out there at Beware the Board on YouTube and on YouTube. And on YouTube
Shorts? Is that what you're trying to say?
No. At Beware the Board on TikTok and on YouTube Shorts is what I meant to say. But Ben, I think that's it.
All right. Well, I guess we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next time.